This is Sasha Sabdar from HCL Software. In this session, I'm going to show you how to create a new project with OneTest API and work with a Git repository. So in this session, what we're going to cover, we're going to create a Git repository in GitHub, then clone the project onto our local drive. We'll then create a new HCL OneTest API project and create a few assets and then apply and revert changes to synchronize with the repositories. Before we do that though, we need to have installed Git already. So this tutorial is not going to go through the installation of Git, but we are going to set up the remote Git repository and then clone the local Git repository onto your local machine. You must have an account set up to be able to access this Git repository from HCL OneTest API. So the first thing that we're going to do is go to GitHub and create a new repository. Click on Repositories, New. I'll give it a name, call it Demo Test. I'll keep it public and I'll initialize the repository and click on Create Repository, and there you go. I now have a repository created for me in GitHub. So then I will now go to a folder of my choice on my drive, and here I'm going to open Git Bash. You can do it with Git GUI if you're more comfortable with that. And what I'm going to do is clone the project onto my local machine. So go back and copy the URL. Click enter, and there you go. That was nice and quick. And if you revert back to your local drive, you can see that it's created a demo test folder with a .git file in there, which means that this repository has now connected to this local repository is in sync with the one on GitHub. So open up HCL OneTest API from the Start menu. And what we're now going to do is create a new project. Click OK. And we'll give it a name, test project. And what we want to do is put this in the folder where Git's been initialized and click finish. And here's a workbench that's been open for you. So there's several perspectives here. So we're on the home perspective. We've got architecture, school, test factories where you go and create the test. And what we also have here is in at the top in Windows preferences. What you need to do here is set up your connection to the remote Git repository. So in here, you can give your Git credentials, username and password, and that will allow you to connect to GitHub. At the bottom here, you can see a little red icon which suggests that, which tells you that it has connected successfully. You are now connected with GitHub, and you can see here that we have when we created this project, there has been 8 new files. So if we go to see the folder C drive here, you can see on your local machine that you've got a number of files. So one thing that you can do is apply those changes. And the way to do that is go to Tools, Deliver Changes. So we're going to do an initial commit. And it's going to deliver those changes to your Git repository. now you can see that there are no new files. All the counters have come down to 0, so there's no new files to go and deliver. So if we go back to GitHub now and just refresh this page, you can see there you go, you got your test project in there with the relevant folders. Okay, so now what we're going to do in RIT is we're going to go and create a quick test, and try and commit this to the repository. So I'll click a folder first, give it a name, and in this folder we'll create a quick test called a log test. All this test will do will simply log certain information. So we're going to say this is a test, click OK and save. So now that we've saved this, you can see here at the bottom that there's been some changes, and there are 2 files that have changed. So if I double click here, you can see that 2 files have been added to my local repository, and therefore I'd like to now commit this to GitHub. So all I have to do is go to Tools and Deliver Changes, and add a comment. And you can see when you deliver changes here, it does a git add, a git commit, and finally a git push to update the repository. So click OK. So that's now done. And if we go now to your repository on GitHub and go into Logical, and here you can see the My Tests folder are in there. You can see the actual test file. So now if we decide to, or someone else decides to, because you're working collaboratively on this project, but if someone decides to modify something here, and we can do this. So we're going to modify this file and commit the changes. So now our local project is no longer in sync with the project here in the repository. So if we go up here and we can see that there's been 1 file that's been modified, so we're behind. So what we can do is now update this project to reflect this change. We can close this for the time being. So if I go Tools, Update Project, and this now should have been updated. So if I double click and open this, you can see now that the text here has been changed from this is a test to this is a modified test. So this is now in sync with the remote repository. To revert changes, it's pretty simple. Imagine that you've made a mistake here by simply copying this log file twice. It is now out of sync with the repository, and you can see here the counter has increased to 1. But you realize you made a mistake and you don't want these changes. So all you've got to do is go Tools and Undo Changes and click OK. So this should undo any changes. We can close this test and reopen, and you can see it's back to the original test. To summarize, in this session we've created a Git repository in GitHub, and we cloned the repository onto our local machine. We then created a new project and a sample test that we committed to GitHub. We then made some changes to the files and applied those changes and reverted those changes to synchronize with the repository. I hope this session was helpful. Thank you.